and centre. It's not really a sex thing. What is it about is we have given the inarticulate a forum to be vile. The inarticulate, the resentful, the people who weren't getting on well in life, weren't enjoying themselves, would take it out on their mates in their own neighbourhood or have a fight at the pub or whatever the case may be, or be bitchy at a party to other women and so on and so forth. Now we've given them a forum where they can actually speak to the world. Now, we've let that cat out of the bag, as it were, so I don't really know how we can put it back. What we tend to do in my world of radio is, and there are some sensitive people in my world of radio, unlike myself, and I just say to them constantly, ignore these people. These are the tragic people.
Yeah.
These are the people whose lives are so miserable and depraved and sad that they have to take it out on other people. They're like any playground bully. So we need to educate children now not to pay any attention to these nasty sides of social media, because they're going to have to deal with it. Just say, look, just explain to them, these are the sad people. These are the people hopefully you'll never meet and you'll never have to deal with them. But don't give them the time of day by actually reading what they write or responding to them.
Yeah. The interesting thing is I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and a tech entrepreneur got up and was asked a question about social media and millennials thinking of themselves as a brand. And he was saying that he thinks in future we'll all look back and think, why the hell did we spend so much time putting pictures of ourselves and our breakfast online for other people to comment on? And while it's so normal now, and I, as much as I would like to, can't imagine quitting social media because it's just part of the social construct now, maybe we will get to that point. And there's this fascinating article I just read the other day that the people who invented the like button for Facebook are now starting to opt out of social media themselves. So the people who invented the stuff that got us addicted to it are now saying, I don't want any part of it.
Interestingly, I've just got a message here, speaking of unfortunate things on social media. Sean Plunkett, who's a new Broadcasting Standards Authority member, he's getting a bit of flack on Twitter right now for tweeting, anyone else feeling for Harvey Weinstein?
I saw that.
Yeah, and I was talking. Well, it's a bit of a stupid thing to say, isn't it? Really, is it silly,
What's that,
Gary?
sorry?
Is it a stupid thing to say?
It's a very stupid thing to say. I don't know what Sean's thinking of. He used to be quite a discerning, intelligent chap, but that I don't know. Maybe he's got some sort of retrograde adolescent thing going on, because why would you identify with Harvey Weinstein or whatever his name is?
Yeah, a guy
he's an appalling human being.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and have you ever tweeted anything, Nadine, that you've regretted?
Probably, but most things I think would be in line with my values, and so if that's Sean Plunkett's values, then he needs to reassess those values.
And what about you? Are you a tweeter, Gary?
I have never tweeted once.
I knew you were going to say that.
I've never read a text, and I've never sent a text.
Right.
I'm a model human being.
Yeah, you've left you'll be leaving a very small digital footprint behind, won't you? Lovely to have you both on the program. We have had a lot of chat on some of the topics, so we're not able to go through everything we had on the list. But I do wish you well with your ticket as well, Gary. I think
that's right. Give a little, just send a little money into me.
Right.
Radio New Zealand National, that'll be just fine.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You've
Nadine, I
inspired...
look forward to your cheque.
Yes, you've inspired me, Gary. I've got one that's outstanding at present, so maybe I'll fight it.
Yeah, I think the cheques rolling in and the money for Gary is just not going to happen. Thanks very much for your time as well, Nadine. What's happening in Auckland? What's the weather like there? Is it sunny,
I'm in a windowless room at the moment, but it's typical Auckland day, some rain, some not.
Right. Yes, we had a thunderstorm in Christchurch, which was pretty awesome last night. Thank you, both of you. We'll catch up again sometime. I'm sure I'll be back in again for Jim tomorrow. Coming up, though, we have news with Katrina Batten.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, day 4, May Heron on the latest from the coalition negotiations. Also tonight, yesterday's terrible head-on collision just north of Taupō and its devastating impact on the Tongan community in Palmerston North. Fires in Napa and Sonoma, Northern California, 15 dead, 50,000 hectares burnt or burning. Christchurch residents fed up with sex workers on their streets are seeking legal advice about how to get them off their streets. What people say about you and think about you when you're on a benefit. The All Whites are to play Peru for the right to go to the Football World Cup, and the Ranfurly Shield and why people love it so much. Stay with us. We're up after the news.
RNZ News at 5. Nisambola, good afternoon. Ko Katrina Batten tēnei. Palmerston North's grieving Tongan community will gather for a vigil soon after a horror crash near Taupo killed one of its members and injured 7 others. In total, 4 people died and 8 were hurt. Eva Corlett reports.
44-year-old Tongan woman Petsi Tuivai died in one vehicle, while a couple and a 5-year-old boy travelling in the other car were killed. The 7 injured who were travelling with Ms Tuivai include a 10-month-old baby boy who is in a critical condition in Starship Hospital and 2 young girls who remain in Rotorua Hospital. A 42-year-old man is in intensive care and a 32-year-old woman is stable in Waikato Hospital. Members of the Tongan community will hold a vigil at the Free Wesley Church in Bunnythorpe, just north of Palmerston North this evening. The Automobile Association says the crash is one of the worst driving tragedies this year. Ko Eva Corlett, tēnei.
The New Zealand First Leader says there's been still no discussion about possible portfolio or ministerial positions for his party in any coalition deal. Winston Peters and his negotiating team are holding back-to-back meetings with National and then Labour for the 4th day running. Here's our political editor Jane Patterson.
The first round of meetings for the day is now complete, with a second underway now. Mr Peters says they're still very much focused on policy.
We've never mentioned anything about personal preferment or position at all.
Labour and the Greens also met this morning, after which the Greens leader James Shaw said he trusted Labour to fairly represent his party's interests. He was asked if he'd accept the deal Labour puts on the table.
It's got to be a stable and responsible government that's going to go the full distance in the national interest, and Labour are working very hard on ensuring that happens.
Winston Peters says a decision will be made by tomorrow, but he's not yet putting a time frame on when that will be announced. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
The replacement for the Manawatu Gorge Road has been narrowed down to 4 alternatives, each of them taking at least 5 years to finish and costing at least $300 million. The road, which connects Palmerston North to the east coast, has been out of action since April after a series of slips. Many parts of the gorge are unstable and it's no longer viewed as a viable long-term route. The Transport Agency's 4 options are upgrading the Saddle Road to meet state highway standards, building a new highway north of the Saddle Road, a new highway south of the Saddle Road across the Ruahine Range, or a new direct route south of the gorge. Public feedback on the shortlist is open until October the 25th, and a preferred option will be announced in December. A St Albans resident says he's at his wit's end after a Christchurch City Council committee rejected a sex worker bylaw. The bylaw would have limited the movement of prostitutes, but a council committee this morning instead opted for a non-regulatory approach. Some residents in St Albans, north of the Central Business District, say they're being abused by sex workers and often see needles and faeces strewn across their driveways. Matt Bonnis says today's decision is frustrating, as he hoped the committee would draw a line in the sand in support of residents. Mr Bonnis says he now has exhausted almost every option and will seek legal advice later this week. The organiser of an anti-meth rally in Whanganui today say groups helping to fight drug addiction need more support from the government. New Zealand P-Pull has opened 8 walk-in centres around the North Island, offering information about P and help for addicts, and has plans to open 3 more, including one in Whanganui. Donna Lawrence, who was a meth addict for 25 years, says NZ P-Pull has great community support, but little else.
We need support from the DHB, the government organisations, because they're the ones that get paid, they're the ones that get funded. We get nothing.
Donna Lawrence says it took the pleas of her children and grandchildren to turn her life around 2 years ago, and she's now determined to help others in a similar position. An opponent of a 5-star hotel planned for Dunedin say its developer needs to get the message and design something appropriate for the city. The developer, Tekapō businessman Anthony Toswell, has changed his mind and plans to appeal in court to try to save the 17-storey glass tower project dubbed the Electric Thistle. Commissioners refused resource consents last month. It's the second major 5-star hotel project rejected in the past 5 years. A spokesperson for the inner city group City Rise Up, Meg Davidson, says the hotel's height and glassy look are outmoded and wrong for the heritage city. Ms Davidson says the developer is wasting his time if he thinks he can cut a few stories off and save the project in the court. It's 5:05. Sport and the All Whites' odds of qualifying for the World Cup have improved slightly, but football fans won't get the chance to see one of the world's greatest players, Argentina's Lionel Messi, strut his stuff in Wellington. New Zealand will play Peru for a place in the World Cup finals in Russia next year, in an intercontinental home and away playoff next month, following the conclusion of South American qualifying today. The All Whites knew they'd be up against the fifth-place team from South America, but who that would be was up in the air, with Argentina one of the 6 teams New Zealand could have ended up playing against. The All Whites coach, Anthony Hudson, says it was a frenetic afternoon, keeping tabs on who they might play.
In my house, we had the big screen, and then we had 3 laptops on the table, and the analyst and the assistant coach. We got the table be changed 4 or 5 times throughout the game. But you can't really analyse. We sort of kept focusing on the next team that was 5th. But listen, we're pleased now. We know what we got. We can start planning.
The dates for the All Whites matches are yet to be confirmed. A series whitewash is on the minds of the Australian netballers as they look to gain a psychological edge over the Silver Ferns ahead of next year's Commonwealth Games. The Diamonds take a 2-0 lead into tonight's 3rd test in Adelaide, having won both Constellation Cup tests in New Zealand. Mid-quarter Liz Watson says they want to turn on an even more dominant performance at home. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, this week's overseas correspondent Shobhanariam is on the line from post-monsoonal Bangalore. Megan Whelan ponders the future of communication. John Thornley explores the spiritual side of another pop song. This month, Chuck Berry's Promised Land. And John Lee reads Chapter 3 of Kate to Goldie's 10 p.m. question, just in time for the 10 o'clock news. On Nights with me, Brian Crump, still the right time for RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Mainly fine, isolated showers clearing tomorrow morning. Waikato to Wellington, including Taumarunui, Taupo and Taihape. Showers, some heavy, clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Gisborne to Wairarapa, showers in Wairarapa spreading north this afternoon, then mostly clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine, but isolated showers remain about the Gisborne ranges. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers becoming isolated, then clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Nelson, a few showers clearing this afternoon and becoming fine. Buller and Westland, fine south of Hokitika. Showers in the north clearing tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, partly cloudy and a few showers clearing by tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. And for the Chatham Islands, rain possibly heavy with thunderstorms this afternoon, turning to showers tomorrow morning, then easing later. It's 5:12. It's 5:08 and you're listening to Checkpoint.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina Batten. Coming up on Checkpoint tonight, coalition negotiations. No discussion about ministerial portfolios yet, but we're told there's been quite huge progress in some policy areas. The All Whites will play Peru in Wellington for the right to go to the Football World Cup in Russia. Also tonight we're in Dunedin, Christchurch, Whanganui, Taranaki, Auckland, the far north and California. But we begin tonight where we ended up spending much of the program last night, on State Highway 1 just north of Taupo. Whatever caused the head-on collision that killed 4 people yesterday afternoon, meaning 13 people have died on New Zealand's roads since Friday. Its impact is already defined. A 5-year-old boy was killed, so too was a Palmerston North mother of 4. And the loss of Pethi Tuivai so suddenly, so terribly, has not only devastated a family, but a tight-knit community too. Nita Blake-Person reports.
Tongan elder Paia Tuimana says Pethi Tuivai's passing has been devastating for the tight-knit community of Palmerston North. They've been gathering today for prayer services and to try to come to terms with the loss of the 44-year-old. Ms Tuivai had been returning to Palmerston North from Auckland after attending a church conference with family and friends when the crash happened. A relative, Olivia Halewhanua, says she received a call from another family member who was in the car yesterday afternoon to say they had been in an accident. She later found out Miss Tuivai had been killed.
Last night, as soon as they heard, everyone just came over. Like I said, my dad's the elder in the family, and everyone just came, and they had a little service in Bunnythorpe for other people that wanted to show their respect. And some of us hasn't slept yet, still it's a shock.
Among those injured was Miss Tuivai's 3-year-old daughter, who was taken to Rotorua Hospital, where her condition is described as stable. Miss Tuivai has 3 sons, 2 of whom are in Palmerston North with family. Ms Halewhanua describes her as a wonderful woman, loved by everyone and someone who loved her children. She was a relief teacher at the Tongan Early Childhood Centre in Palmerston North. Her family is in New Zealand on a 3-year working visa.
They're into their 2nd year, and they were planning on staying here to have a better life. So, we feel for the husband and the kids. We don't know what will happen in the future.
Ms Halewhanua says the Tongan community in Palmerston North has rallied around to support Ms Tuivai's children, while her husband has travelled to Taupo to make arrangements for the return of her body. She says they've been holding prayer services today for the family and for those injured, including a 10-month-old who was flown to Auckland Starship Hospital in a critical condition. A 56-year-old woman, 60-year-old man and a 5-year-old boy in the second car also died. Their names have not yet been released by the police. The horror crash is just the latest in a spate of accidents on New Zealand roads in recent weeks. On Sunday, a collision in Southland killed 3 people, and this morning a milk tanker driver had to be cut from his vehicle after a crash in the Waido Valley. The AA's road safety spokesperson Dylan Thompson says the crashes are horrible tragedies for everyone involved, including those first on the scene.
The volunteer firefighters, the paramedics, the helicopter pilots, the people who work to clear the roads, and everybody involved is hugely affected by these. We need to do more to try and stop these crashes happening.
Dylan Thompson says New Zealand's road toll is increasing for the 4th year in a row, and drivers need to take responsibility for their actions to stop the trend. For Checkpoint, Cornita Blakeperson, TNA.
Let's go to Wellington now with the time at 12 minutes past 5. New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters says huge progress has been made in coalition talks as his team shuttled back and forth to meetings with National and Labour for a 4th consecutive day. Mr Peters says he will make up his mind which way he will go by tomorrow night, but the man in charge of the party holding the balance of power in this country says the public will not find out until an unspecified later date what the decision is. With the wrap-up of another day of negotiations, here's our political reporter, May Heron.
The last few days have looked very much the same. New Zealand First goes back and forth between the 2 major parties, National Labour. Every day Winston Peters gets stopped as he enters and exits the talks. Every day he gets asked about what was discussed. Every day we are reminded the talks are confidential. Today, Mr Peters says there's been huge progress.
Finding out what we agree on, what we don't agree on, what we can still negotiate on, where we might take things into the future by cooperation. So that at the end you may not have their decision or our decision as a policy, but a mutual decision.
But again, no details around which policies are being discussed. Winston Peters wouldn't budge today, even when asked about one of his favourite talking points, immigration.
Now, is this an attempt to entrap me in a comment which I can't make, which I told you on day one I couldn't make? I mean, can we try and cooperate here without me looking like I'm being evasive, because I'm not?
There also haven't been any chats about specific ministerial roles.
I said it's all about policy, and it is. We've never mentioned anything about personal preferment or position at all.
Labour's Jacinda Ardern is also keeping relatively mum and repeating the same script. Positive, progress, policy.
Party looking forward to holding another meeting this evening, again to continue to talk about the policy priorities and how we can move forward New Zealand both economically and socially.
But if Labour is an echo chamber, National is radio silence. The last time we heard from them was Monday night. And while Winston Peters says a decision on any deal will be made by tomorrow, he's being coy on when the public can expect an announcement. It could be Friday, it could be the weekend, it could be much later.
No, look, we're worried about the process tomorrow. Tomorrow.
Can you tell us
We are not going to be leapfrogging all over the place. You know what we're doing? We've got a plan and we're sticking to it.
Each of the parties have their own ratification process. The Greens have to hold a special general meeting of national delegates, and that could be held online or via phone conference. Labour's 20-member Executive Council would sign off on any deal. National and New Zealand First will consult their respective board and caucus. Mr Peters will not say if his board, which includes himself, his deputy Ron Mark, plus Brent Catchpole and Anne Martin, will convene on Thursday night to talk over any decision. Labour has also been meeting daily with the Greens, who are also needed to make up the numbers in any deal with New Zealand First. The Greens leader, James Shaw, says he's confident he'll be happy with any deal Labour comes up with.
You know, Jacinda made kind of fairness one of her sort of principal values in the campaign. I've known her for a number of years, and I said this before the election. I trust her, and she seems to be doing a good job of it.
Despite refusing to meet with the Greens directly, forcing the party to negotiate through Labour, Winston Peters says he's got nothing against James Shaw.
I've never had a bad word with him or about him that you can possibly quote, because I've never said something bad about him in my career.
And while it's difficult to get any answers around what policies are on or off the table, we did find out what politicians are snacking on. Cheese scones at Labour and Greens, and a ginger loaf, possibly baked by Jacinda Ardern herself, for talks with New Zealand First. Though Mr Peters wasn't too happy to be quizzed about that.
How was the ginger loaf?
The what?
There was cake at this meeting, I understand.
Look, this is a rather serious issue, right? It's about the next government of this country, and you ask me about a cake?
No word on what treats will be on offer during further talks with National and Labour tonight. From Parliament for Checkpoint, May Heron.
It's coming up to 17 minutes past 5. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Thank you for being with us. The list of women accusing the Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein of sexual harassment is growing and includes some very big names such as Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow. Weinstein, who it's widely says has been thanked more than anyone else in the history of Oscar acceptance speeches, was sacked from his own company this week after harassment allegations that stretch back decades were recently made public, along with details of out-of-court settlements with several women, some dating back years. Now, 13 women have told the New Yorker magazine that the movie mogul sexually harassed them or assaulted them. 3 say they were raped. CNN's Randy Kay has the details.
He allegedly preyed on some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Actress Ashley Judd said film producer Harvey Weinstein asked if he could give her a massage or if she would watch him shower. When Gwyneth Paltrow was just 22, she told the New York Times that the mega producer had put his hands on her and suggested they head to the bedroom of his hotel suite. Actress Angelina Jolie told the Times that Weinstein made unwanted advances toward her in a hotel room back in the 1990s. Actress Mira Sorvino told the New Yorker magazine that Weinstein sexually harassed her more than 2 decades ago at the Toronto Film Festival, chasing her around a hotel room. Weinstein harassed or assaulted at least 20 women over the years, according to The New Yorker and The New York Times, many of them aspiring actresses who were hoping to get their big break. Just today, The New Yorker released audio of Weinstein trying to convince a model named Ambra Gutierrez to come to his hotel room in Manhattan, a day after he allegedly forcibly groped her. The disturbing conversation caught on tape during a sting operation by the NYPD in March 2015.
What do we have to do here?
Nothing. I'm going to take a shower. You sit there and have a drink. Water.
I don't drink. Can I stay on the bar?
No.
I don't want
everything, please. I swear I won't. Just sit with me. Don't embarrass me in the hotel. I'm here all the time.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Please come in now and 1 minute. And if you want to leave, when the guy comes with my
Why
jacket,
yesterday you touched my breast?
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Just come on. I'm used to that. Come on.
Are you used to that?
Yes, come in.
In another incident detailed in The New Yorker, Lucia Evans said she was assaulted by Weinstein back in 2004 when she was still in college. It happened during a meeting arranged by one of Weinstein's assistants, which is how many of these meetings came to be. After she says he told her about 2 scripts, she says he forced her to perform oral sex on him. One accuser, a former Fox News anchor, said Weinstein cornered her in a hotel a decade ago and masturbated in front of her.
That's where he cornered me, in this vestibule, and leaned in and tried to kiss me. That's when he blocked the entrance or exit for me and said, well, then just stand there and be quiet. He immediately exposed himself and began pleasuring himself.
In response to the New York Times investigation, Harvey Weinstein issued a statement saying, I appreciate the way I behaved with colleagues in the past has caused a lot of pain, and I sincerely apologize for it. He promised he was working with therapists and would deal with this issue head on. A spokesperson for him also telling The New Yorker, any allegations of non-consensual sex are unequivocally denied by Mr. Weinstein, adding, Mr. Weinstein has confirmed that there were never any acts of retaliation against any women for refusing his advances. The spokesperson says Weinstein is hoping for a second chance. A second chance? Weinstein has already been fired from the Weinstein Companies, a stunning blow to one of the biggest names in Hollywood. A man some women say subjected them to what they called turn-down duty. According to the New York Times, that meant preparing Harvey Weinstein for sleep, with Weinstein at times appearing naked in front of them and requiring them to be present for bathing or massages. All of this for years, an open secret in Hollywood.
Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein.
And that ends that report from CNN's Randy Kay. It's 5:21. Let's head now to the Napa Valley and its neighbouring county, Sonoma. Roughly 50,000 hectares have been burned. That's an area about twice the size of the Abel Tasman National Park, as somewhere in the region of 20 fires rage across Northern California. The confirmed death toll now stands at 15. That may rise because the fires moved so very fast and became so very big with absolutely no warning, and some communities have not been visited since the fires got to them. Sean Scully is editor of the Napa Valley Register. His own home was spared because the wind pushed the flames away from it, but you can see the smoke from everywhere. So large is the area now burnt or burning.
The fires are visible all over the place because they're primarily in the hills. Napa Valley is kind of a long, thin bowl, and the fires are along the hills, so everyone can see them for miles. Though there's smoke, there's now a heavy pall of smoke over the valley. But that first night, it was very clear. The winds were blowing very strongly all day. It was a beautiful Sunday, no indication of any trouble except for these really strong winds, 30, 40-mile-an-hour gusts. And about 10 o'clock, people were starting to go to bed. Everything was fine. Then by 11 o'clock, all hell had broken loose. We had fires breaking out simultaneously at two ends of the valley. 3 or 4 fires broke out almost simultaneously, and we still don't know the cause. It could have been wind-related. But certainly once the blazes were going, we had dry brush, very high winds, and these fires just took off. It was really quite frightening.
And the pictures are extraordinary because you see the speed with which the flames are just moving through home after home.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's we had the wind. We're also coming out of we've just come out of a long, very severe drought, and so there are a lot of dead trees, a lot of dead brush, and there was just nothing anybody can do. People just had to flee for their lives, and there was no indication of it. You know, if it wasn't like a little blaze that sort of dawdled around a little bit and then exploded. These things took off instantly. In fact, where I live, a fire broke out not far. It was within sight of my house. I was up on my porch watching it, and then I watched as these winds blew this tower of flame up over the mountain, and that's what hit Santa Rosa. It burned about 1.5 miles down into their urban limits, destroyed residential areas. It destroyed some major commercial areas. It jumped a 4-lane highway or a 6-lane highway. And it really was quite devastating. And the terrible thing about it is these fires are still burning. The winds have died down, but the firefighters have been unable to contain them. They've been so busy trying to get people out and just save lives that these fires are still burning, so entirely new areas are being threatened even now.
Sean, you described standing on the balcony and watching the flames, and we are very familiar with this because of Australian fires, which just across the Tasman from us. And it's the thoughtlessness, the arbitrary and random nature of fate. So one wind change, and it's your home, but then it starts going the other way, and there is no telling, is there, which way it's going to move?
No, and that was the weirdest thing. Sitting on my porch, I had the house packed. I had my son ready to go, and I was sitting there watching, thinking, "There's nothing I can do about it.
Oh.
The house is either going to burn down or it's not." And then when the fire went up over the mountain, I thought, "Oh my God, we know people who live up there," and I knew where that fire was headed. And so it's just this helplessness. You know what's going to sweep down on those people over there, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing. And how many people are we talking about? Do you know? And I'm sorry to reduce this to the maths, but I guess this gives us a scale of this event. Do you know how many homes have been lost? How many people have been evacuated?
It's a minimum of 1,500 homes. It's probably much higher than that at this point because that was the numbers we were getting this morning. Most of that's been in Sonoma County, our neighboring county. Yeah. We've lost probably close to 200 here in Napa. Overall, about 20,000 people have been evacuated, and fortunately, the death toll, as far as we know, has been relatively modest for such a surprise in the middle of the night. There are 15 known deaths, 2 here in Napa. It was actually a really sad story. It was a couple that had just celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary. I had prepared their anniversary announcement for the paper back in March myself, and they were 99 and 100, and they were trapped in their house and died. It's just heartbreaking.
That is the editor of the Register newspaper, Sean Scully, who was joining us from the Napa Valley earlier this afternoon. 26.5 minutes past 5. Let's head home again. Hope is on the horizon for cancer patients who often have to endure a form of insult on top of injury, the effects of hair loss while undergoing chemotherapy. In a New Zealand first, Nelson Hospital is running a pilot program funded by the Breast Cancer Foundation that uses a special scalp cooling machine to reduce the risk of hair loss during chemo. Here's our Nelson reporter, Tracy Neal, with the story.
After the shock of a cancer diagnosis, doctors and patients say chemotherapy-related hair loss ranks near the top of many women's fears. A former hairdresser, Raywin Robertson, who underwent cancer treatment 3 years ago, says it can lead to a crippling loss of self-esteem. It's also like wearing a badge that tells others you're ill.
When you lose your hair, people automatically think you're sick and treat you differently. They don't know how to respond to you. They don't know what to say to you. You sort of feel inferior, although you can be quite normal feeling on the inside, and go out and then somebody will look at you funny and you just feel little again.
The Breast Cancer Foundation has spent $67,000 on the pilot scheme. It includes a special scalp cooling machine and a specialist nurse to operate it for 6 months. It works by making the scalp cold enough to constrict the blood vessels, limiting the amount of chemotherapy that reaches the hair follicles. The Foundation's chief executive, Evangelia Henderson, says the aim is to improve the quality of life of women undergoing treatment.
It's hugely distressing for patients, and so why have them go through such a distressing time if they don't have to? So this is why it's such a great pilot.
Ms. Henderson says the pilot is specific to breast cancer patients, but the technology would be available to patients with other kinds of cancers if it's adopted elsewhere in the country. She says it's been used overseas for some time and is proven to work on most people.
And whilst it doesn't help everybody, so not all women react the same way, we're hoping that more than 50% of women undergoing chemotherapy whilst using the scalp cooling will keep their hair.
Breast cancer is the most common cancer for New Zealand women, with 3,000 diagnosed each year. Oncologist Kate Gregory, who is leading the 6-month pilot project at Nelson Hospital, sees between 4 and 5 new patients each week, and she believes patients who feel good about themselves respond better to treatment.
You know, I do think that patients who sort of manage to carry on their normal lives as much as possible do seem to cope better with things, you know, that normal life is continuing. And I think that is important for people if it's at all possible. And I think, you know, some women who lose their hair, some women cope with it fine and it doesn't really bother them. But others, I think it is challenging for people.
Dr Gregory is grateful that the Breast Cancer Foundation and the District Health Board are willing to trial the cooling cap technology. Hairdresser Raywin Robertson says it's fantastic news. She says hair grows back after chemotherapy, often better than before, but the main thing for patients is to learn how not to feel bad about themselves.
Go and talk to people about it and see how they've coped with it. There's funding for getting wigs and things through the Cancer Society. The government funds a percentage of it, so definitely go and do that. They're specialists in their fields to provide the wigs and suit your face shape. It's fun. You know, wear a couple of wigs or wear scarves.
The Breast Cancer Foundation's Pink Ribbon Appeal is tomorrow and Friday. In Nelson for Checkpoint, Tracy Neal.
29 and a half to 6, you are with Checkpoint on RNZ. Coming up on the programme, could Dunedin's thwarted 5-star hotel plan rise from the ashes? The All Whites are going to play Peru for a shot at getting into football's World Cup. The Ranfurly Shield tonight in Taranaki. Taranaki are playing Manawatu. Katrina is very excited, but for those of you who aren't, why is the Ranfurly Shield such a big deal? What is it about the log of wood that people love so much? Nona's next with business news and a whole lot of other stuff before 6, but first the headlines with Taranaki fan Katrina Batten.
Palmerston North's grieving Tongan community will gather for a vigil soon after a horror crash near Taupo killed one of its members and injured 7 others. In total, 4 people died and 8 were hurt. Members of the Tongan community will hold a vigil at the Free Wesley Church in Bunnythorpe this evening. Winston Peters says there's still been no discussion during coalition talks on possible ministerial positions for his party. The New Zealand First Leader and his negotiating team are holding back-to-back meetings with National and Labour for the 4th day running. Mr Peters says they're still very much focused on policy. Labour and the Greens also met this morning, after which the Greens leader James Shaw said he trusted Labour to fairly represent his party's interests. Mr Peters says a decision will be made by tomorrow, but he's not yet saying when it will be announced. 4 routes have been put forward to replace the Manawatu Gorge Road, each taking 5 years to finish and costing at least $300 million. The slip-prone road, which connects Palmerston North to the east coast, has been out of action since April. The Transport Agency's 4 options are upgrading the Saddle Road, a new highway north of the Saddle Road, a new highway south of the Saddle Road across the Ruahine Range, or a new direct route south of the gorge. A preferred option will be announced in December. The list of women accusing the Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein of sexual harassment is growing and includes A-list names such as Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow. Weinstein was sacked from his own company this week after allegations stretching back decades were made public, along with details of settlements with several women. Now 13 women have come forward to say the movie mogul sexually harassed or assaulted them, including 3 who say they'd been raped. Those are the headlines. I'll be back at 6.
Which is what? How many minutes away? 27 minutes now.
27 exactly.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. Let's turn to business news now with Nona, who's on the other side of me. Hi, Nona. The FMA, the Financial Markets Authority, has brought a second case of insider trading on the share market.
Yeah, that's right. So earlier this year, they brought a case where they succeeded in a conviction with an insider trading, this time related to a company called eRoad, which is a software developer, another software developing company. This time, the company, and in the last case as well, the company was not implicated. So that'll make that very clear. In this case, it's a former employee or potentially, they don't really say, it could be a role, with a company called VMob, which is now known as Plexure. Plexure, right. Yeah. So they make brand software, an app like that, but they're not implicated in this, and they said that the company had been cooperating with the investigation, and so they brought these charges, and the FMA takes this thing very seriously.
And I like the fact they do, because for, boy, when I was a lad, And I'll bore everyone with the history at some stage. Insider trading was just rampant.
Yeah, the rules have been tightened considerably, and the fines are there too. So yeah, second case, and you know, this is the sort of thing that the market's very careful about watching out for, and will investigate, and yeah, clearly will bring charges when they think that there's something to be answered.
Well, we'll stay tuned for the results of all of this. Thank you.
You know,
Nana.
and it's interesting because just as a point of interest, you know, the Plexure, even though they're not implicated in these charges, their share price fell 13% today, which was kind of interesting because overall the market was up. Again, you know.
Another record.
Yeah.
Just before you move on, I really like this story. I'm just looking at it in your notes. A Christchurch-based social enterprise story is trying to raise money with an issue of broccoli bonds.
Broccoli bonds.
What are they?
Well, I guess it's the real green economy happening
dad joke.
Jeez, never mind. It wasn't my joke, actually. It was our business editor's joke.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you,
dad joke, Giles
you know.
Beckford.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the guy with all the jokes. Okay. Well, anyways, yes. Now, so what these bonds are basically an opportunity for people to take up to a minimum $500 investment in this company. They're looking to raise $200,000, and it's a company called Cultivate Christchurch. And so what they are is a Christchurch-based initiative that started a couple of years ago, and they employ, you know, young people and have interns and so on, and they go around the city collecting, you know, I guess green waste for composting, and then they use that to produce vegetables and all sorts that they then sell on to restaurants in the CBD of Christchurch, which is kind of interesting. And now they have an opportunity to develop a larger site in a new developing suburb in southern Christchurch, and so that's what they're going to use the money for. So that's $200,000, and what you get a choice of, you can get 15% return on your investment, so all of what your principal plus 15% in return interest, and or a combination of produce and a lesser cash the green stuff.
Yeah, 15% sounds like a high return, gosh.
It actually is a pretty high return. And so you could also get it in, you know, green vegetables. The choice is yours. I think they have two other options. One is a return of 5% cash interest and or 10% and the balance in produce. So there you go.
Broccoli bonds. I love
broccoli
it.
bonds.
What happened on the markets? You hinted, didn't you? You teased us with the fact that
yes,
we got another record.
Well, we had another record close up 0.3%, 23 points to 8,061.
Yep.
And the dollar is trading really exactly where it was yesterday at 70.7 US cents, 90.9 Australian, and 53.6 pence.
Nana Peltier with today's business news. Thank you very much indeed, Nana. Let's go to Christchurch now, where residents fed up with sex workers operating from their streets are seeking legal advice after a council committee voted down developing a bylaw to regulate their movement. Now, St Albans residents have been plagued with problems ever since the earthquakes closed the CBD almost 7 years ago, pushing the street-based sex workers into the residential area of Manchester Street. Now, the city streets have since reopened, but some sex workers have remained in the suburb. Residents say their properties are under siege and their families are suffering verbal and physical abuse. Logan Church reports.
They have a right to do business, they have a right to be on the street, etc. But we have rights as well.
Giles Golden moved out of the area after his property was vandalised and he saw sex workers passed out on his lawn.
A little Labrador puppy at 8 weeks old, finding it's chewing something on the drive and you go and find it's a condom. Finding needles in your garden, finding faeces on your drive, finding people fornicating in your backyard, leaving their condoms there.
A council report presented two options: adopt a bylaw or go for a non-regulatory approach, at which a community working group would try to relocate sex workers. The council's Regulatory Performance Committee unanimously voted for the second option today, saying regulation wouldn't be effective. St Albans resident Matt Bonnis, who has been fighting for regulation for years, says the decision is frustrating.
We've had 7 long years of this. We were hoping that council would actually exercise its governance role in a clear-cut way. The sympathy expressed by both the council officers and the council was palpable, but sympathy doesn't resolve this issue.
If the council goes with the committee's recommendation, a community working group would be established to help relocate the sex workers. They would look at introducing measures such as increasing access to public toilets, installing rubbish bins and improving street lighting. A New Zealand Prostitutes Collective spokesperson, Catherine Healy, welcomed the decision.
I think the council has come up with a very considered response. I think the collaborative response suits us. We work with sex workers directly, obviously, and other community groups who do so, and we will continue to try and effect change that will benefit the residents.
Matt Bonnis says he was hoping the committee would draw a line in the sand in support of residents.
The whole argument here is this is just a commercial activity treated as such. And to me, it's really clear cut. So I think the issue got confused and conflated rather than actually dealt with in a black and white manner.
And I suppose the next step is waiting to see what council says.
Oh, look, council will... Please. Council will just go with what this group have said. They won't do anything different.
The non-regulatory option also has the backing of the police, who last month decided regulation wouldn't be enforceable. This was a sudden U-turn on their original position. Giles Golden says the authorities have let residents down.
From the lawmakers to the executive, nothing has happened. The problem goes on. So consequently, I'm quite disappointed with the performance of the council and the New Zealand Police. I see their job as helping law-abiding people live safely in their own neighbourhoods and in their own homes.
A police representative attended today's meeting but refused to be interviewed today. The City Council will make a final decision on what approach to take at a meeting next month. Matt Bonnis says he will be seeking legal advice later this week. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, Logan Church.
A plan to build Dunedin's first five-star hotel may rise from the ashes, though many heritage advocates wish it wouldn't. Tekapo businessman Anthony Toswell now says he will appeal the decision to decline consent for the 17-storey building that's been dubbed the Electric Thistle. A panel of independent commissioners last month turned down the project for resource consents because of its visual impact on the heritage city and the way it would shade nearby public spaces. What's next? Well, our Otago Southland reporter Ian Telfer has this.
The hotel site's a Dunedin City Council car park, and the council's been trying to smooth the way for the hotel without bending the legal resource consent process. At the site today, people were divided on the plan.
I think it's really ugly. I think it's a blot on the landscape, to be honest. Couldn't they build it down by the harbour?
So 17 stories, glass
Fantastic.
hotel. Would you like to see it?
Love it.
I think it's a no-no.
More jobs. We just need more jobs.
The developer Anthony Toswell says he's not giving up and might be able to offer a new design or drop 5 stories off the top when he gets to the Environment Court. But a co-founder of the inner city group City Rise Up, Meg Davidson, says the hotel's height and glassy look are all wrong for the city.
Dunedin is not up for sale. We don't have to sell ourselves to the highest bidder. We do have a right to wait until something appropriate comes along. And I just don't know why people with that much money can't hire architects that would come up with something appropriate.
It's proving hard to get a 5-star hotel across the line in Dunedin. A high-profile attempt 4 years ago to build a 27-storey tower on the waterfront also got declined. That has the Otago Chamber of Commerce worried and trying to broker solutions. A local conference organiser and former Chamber of Commerce chairperson, Ali Copeman, says she's pleased the developer's not giving up. She says it must be possible to build a decent-looking 5-star hotel.
It is a little bit embarrassing, the negativity around the decision. It affects the mood of the city. People just wonder what we have to do to get the investment in the city. We've obviously got people who want to invest here. We have to make sure that we're working with them and communicating openly with them so that we can move forward.
The developer, Mr Toswell, says he's changed his mind about appealing because the project has too much public support to give up now. He says he will look at a new design and making it smaller, but he can only go so far.
My job as a developer, and with the fact that we have the support we allege we've got in Dunedin for it, is to make sure that we design a landmark. And a landmark, as I said, that complements the cathedral and the town hall adjacent to it. I don't know how a little building of 5 stories is going to do that, nor is anyone ever going to stay in it, nor is it going to be a 5-star hotel. So, I mean, someone needs to wake up to these points and to appreciate what we're trying to do for Dunedin.
Mr Toswell says he'll lodge papers for the appeal within the next week, ensuring Dunedin's 5-star hotel debate just keeps going on. In Dunedin for Checkpoint, Ian Telfer.
Let's look at some sport now. The All Whites' chances of qualifying for the Football World Cup in Russia next year have been given a boost, with the home side set to take on Peru in qualifiers rather than the formidable Argentina, although it has to be said Peru ain't a bad team. New Zealand and Peru will clash in an intercontinental home and away playoff next month, the home leg in Wellington, after Peru finished 5th in the South American qualifying stage today. However, it does mean football fans here won't get the chance to see one of the world's greatest players, Argentina's Lionel Messi, strut his stuff in the capital, which really would have been something special. Sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
The All Whites knew they'd be up against the 5th place team from South America, but just who that would be was still up in the air until the final round of matches today. New Zealand football fans were hoping that 5th place side would be Argentina. But Lionel Messi had other ideas, scoring a hat-trick as he guided his side to a 3-1 win over Ecuador, meaning Argentina finished 3rd in their group to automatically qualify for Russia.
And Messi in space. Messi to accelerate, to look for the hat-trick. He is unbelievable. Lionel Messi saves Argentina.
Peru snuck into 5th spot with a late equaliser, drawing 1-1 with Colombia to book their tickets to Wellington. The All Whites coach Anthony Hudson says it was a frenetic afternoon trying to keep tabs on just who they might play.
In my house we had the big screen and then we had 3 laptops on the table and the analyst and the assistant coach, we got the table be changed 4 or 5 times throughout the game. But you can't really analyse. We sort of kept focusing on the next team that was 5th. But listen, we're pleased now. We know what we got. We can start planning.
Peru's ranked 12th in the world compared to New Zealand at 113. Winning the opening leg in Wellington will be crucial if Hudson and the All Whites are to get to Russia.
We need a big crowd. We need a big atmosphere. You know, when we went to Tokyo last week, the home crowd there was unbelievable. Loud, the whole game. Every mistake you made, they're all over it. It just adds to the pressure. So we need that. We need that at home for our home fans. They really are, for this game, the 12th man. We need to put pressure on the opposition. We need to encourage us. It's massive. It's massive. The home advantage is massive for us.
Peru are a far more palatable opposition for the All Whites to overcome, says former All Whites defender Ben Sigmund, when considering just who they might have been up against.
From an All White point of view and a fan point of view, probably a good outcome. Even though Peru are a decent team, I'd far rather play them than Chile or Argentina. So far so good for the All Whites.
Football's world governing body FIFA has yet to confirm the dates for the home and away playoff matches. For Checkpoint, Stephen Hewson.
Let's go to Whanganui now, where former meth users have called for greater government support for addicts at an anti-P rally. The NZP Pull group organised the event to raise awareness about the dangers of methamphetamine and gain backing for a walk-in centre for addicts in the city. There's a lot of calls for greater support for people trying desperately to get off meth. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin went along.
About 150 people braved driving rain to listen to former addicts tell harrowing tales about the personal cost of methamphetamine addiction. Some had lost their jobs, others had lost their children to the courts, some spoke of their descent into madness, and others spoke up for those who didn't live long enough to beat their addiction. But there were also remarkable stories from those who, against all the odds, had lived to tell their tale. Former addict and event organiser Donna Lawrence says she knows the perils of P all too well.
I got sick, I lost my daughter, I lost my moko, I lost all contact with my family, and I was driven into a lonely space where I knew that if I didn't pull my finger out of my ass, I was going to lose everything.
Ms Lawrence has now been clean for 3 years. She says organisations like NZP Pull need support to help addicts turn their lives around.
We have support amongst the grassroots people. We have support within our own community, our old people and stuff, but we need support from the DHB, the government organisations, because they're the ones that get paid. They're the ones that get funded. We get nothing.
Rihanna Paultaka says she was on home detention when P got a hold of her.
I was reaching out and trying to get help where I could, and it wasn't happening as fast as I needed it to happen, so I ended up giving my kids to my mum and cutting my bracelet off and going to jail for 3 months. From there, I reached out to family that were up in Auckland, and they helped me get into rehab.
The 27-year-old mum of 2 says more needs to be done to reach out to addicts.
They definitely do, especially to those that are reaching out and asking for it, because there's absolutely nothing in Wanganui. And I know for treatment as well, it'll be hard to be in Wanganui and do treatment in Wanganui, because at the end of the day, this is our home.
The Wanganui Mayor Hamish McDougall attended the event to show his support for a walk-in centre in the city. Mr McDougall says the P problem in Wanganui is no worse than in any other New Zealand city, and warned it was a drug that didn't discriminate.
I know a young father who had a great job working in Wanganui, great parents, somehow got obsessed with P. The family broke apart. He ended up in prison. He lost his job naturally, and it took 4 or 5 years of putting himself back together.
Rihanna Paultucker, who now has one of her children back in her care, says the rewards for getting clean are immense.
So my journey is really paying off, my recovery.
And what would your message be to other users?
There's a life beyond your wildest dreams if you choose to stay sober. There's that internal calmness about you that, yeah.
The NZP Pool organisation has established 8 walk-in centres around the North Island for people seeking information about help for P addiction. It has plans in motion to start up 3 more centres, including one in Wanganui. In Wanganui for Checkpoint, ko Robin Martin Tēnā.
We turn now to the Ranfurly Shield. Taranaki is defending it against Manawatu in New Plymouth tonight, having won it from Canterbury on Friday. That was an extraordinary game. Now, for those of you who don't much care for rugby, here's why people give such a damn about our oldest provincial competition. So far this season, it's been played for by teams like Canterbury and Otago, yes, with their professional players, yes, many of whom have Super Rugby contracts and live the good life on rugby's back. Business as usual, in other words. But it's also been played for by teams like Whanganui and Mid-Canterbury, who don't have a Super Rugby contract among them, and include players who will never earn their living playing rugby and will never appear in a MasterCard advertisement or on a giant billboard wearing only their undies. Kevin Smiley Barrett, father of All Blacks Bowden, Scott and Geordie, knows what it's like to win the Shield against the big city boys. In 1996, his Taranaki team beat Auckland to take the Shield. Smiley played 196 games for Taranaki, beginning when winning the Shield was still a bit of a dream for a kid from the farm back in 1986.
I was 21 when I first played for Taranaki, and it was 96 we won it, so there's 10 years there, and I think I trotted up to Auckland about 3 occasions to be thought, you know, we're in with a show at sort of half time, but as Auckland did with a lot of teams. I mean, I was thinking back then, I mean, they had Fitzy, Olo Brown, Craig Down, the Wetton boys, you know, Foxy, and goodness knows, they had 13 or 15 All Blacks, you know, so they were a jolly good team, you know, so and, you know, they put us away in the last 20 minutes as they did a lot of teams, you know, so but saying that, you know, and when we won it in 96, it was awesome. I mean, at Taranaki, we didn't have our form was a bit scratchy at the leading up to that. I think Bull Allen there, he was in the All Blacks in South Africa at the time actually, and I think someone rang him and he couldn't believe it. You know, he did believe it. You know, we'd won it, you know, because, like I say, our form was shit. But like, in town, there was parades, and I mean, you know, I think we packed the park, you know, 20,000 people, and it was huge. But yeah, it's like it's so special because I mean, it rates back to I think it's in the early 1900s. I think it's been played for, you know, and like a lot of All Blacks can play, you know, 50, 100 games, but they never actually won the Shield. They don't actually, they don't know that feeling of winning that Shield, you know. It's like, well, it's like winning a World Cup, I suppose, you know, but it doesn't come around. It doesn't, well, no. Some guys never get the opportunity to play, and some guys never get the opportunity to hold it up, you know, so, yeah, it's simple as that, really.
I also think it speaks to a nostalgia for something we've lost, which is the connection of rugby with communities, right? And so, well, I mean, your boys are All Blacks, and we love them to bits, and they're fantastic players. We don't see them at home very often anymore. And the thing about the Shield is it's won by guys who live amongst us, isn't it? It's won by guys who you might see at the local fish and chippy or the local butcher shop, or who might fix your cars. Well, they're not amateurs, but it speaks to our romantic sense of rugby, really, that it comes from our communities.
It is exactly right, and here's Manawatu. They've had a couple of wins on the road, got a bit of form, and there's Kurt Baker in there. He's played for Tertiary. I think he was in the team when was he in the team in 2012 when they won it off Southland there? I mean, that was another special game. We went down there, when Southland had it in South. It was but it was awesome. That's the way it is, really. You got to get so many chances, John. You got to know them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you'd be going tonight, wouldn't you? That's the stupidest question I've ever asked anyone on the radio.
Yeah, I'm actually on the farm. Staff are off this weekend, and Robin's shot to Auckland. There's little Ella's got swimming in Auckland, so we'll get the cows milked and shoot on too. Yeah, so it's a bit windy here at the moment. There's a bit of a front come up, but hopefully that should pass through by tonight. And it'll be a good night. It'll be a bit windy, but it'll be fine anyway.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful time. I hope you enjoy every minute of it. You know what it's like to win it, and I hope you have a magic night. It's so good to talk to you.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure, John.
Kevin Smiley Barrett, who's milked the cows and will be on the way to the game as we speak. He may even be there. Let's find out. Let's go live to the ground now. School holidays. It's kick-off at 7:30, so not many people there yet, but it will be a real family occasion in New Plymouth. And there at Yarrow Stadium is the president of the Taranaki Rugby Supporters Club, Grant Hassel. Grant, are you there?
John, most certainly I am here amongst some very eager supporters that have already made their way to Yarrow Stadium now to witness what they hope will be a successful defence.
I like Yarrow. I saw the Samoans play there a long time ago before you were born, and I saw...
I don't think so, John. I've seen every game the Samoans have played in New Plymouth.
What's that?
I've seen every game the Samoans have played in New Plymouth.
And I saw the French play the All Blacks, and you're really close to the action, aren't you? It's fantastic.
Most certainly.
Yeah,
absolutely. A great atmosphere at the ground here, particularly with a big crowd in, which we're hopeful for tonight. The rain certainly has ceased and the breeze is dying. And the last report I had, there was over 8,000 tickets already sold.
And if the weather clears, you'll get walk-up, right? So you're looking north of 10 grand. And here's what's wonderful about the Ranfurly Shield. With all due respect to the Mitre 10 Cup, if it had just been Manawatu playing Taranaki without the Ranfurly Shield at stake, what would you have got? 1,000, 2,000?
There most probably would have been about 4,000.
Right, okay. So you double your crowd and maybe more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Now, where are you? Are you beneath where are you as you speak to us?
We are at the ground level, at the southern end of the TSB stand, which is considered the main stand, which is on the eastern side of the ground.
Yep.
And we can't quite see out onto the number one field where the games take place, but I'm just walking through the
our man on the scene.
Hello, there's the scoreboard with the big Taranaki ball on it. I'm looking at the posts. The posts are hardly moving. As I say, that breeze is dying away. The gates actually haven't officially quite opened yet, but a number of our supporters have found their way through. It's all about connections in New Plymouth. You might just pick up a little bit of the breeze in my phone now, but as I look at the chairman of the Taranaki Rugby Union, Lindsay Thompson, he's come out to inspect the grounds. He's looking a bit pensive.
Is he?
Understandably, looking at that Manawatu backline, they look potentially dangerous, but hopefully those Taranaki forwards can lift it up. We're talking about the history, John, of Taranaki and Ranfurly Shield rugby, and one of the great names of Taranaki rugby, of course, was R.H. Brown, who used to drop kick goals left, right and centre when Taranaki held the Shield in 63 to 65, and he passed a famous comment. And that comment was, when Taranaki get top backs, we'll be world beaters. And we saw it last Friday night. They weren't called world beaters, but they were called Ranfurly Shield title holders.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. Gosh, I'm just looking at the back line. So Ngani Laumape is playing for Manawatu. That's exciting because he is an All Black on the rise. But Taranaki have Waisaki Naholo playing. So All Black against All Black in the back line. And then I look at Oteri Black is playing for Manawatu. You actually, though you'd have to say, Taranaki have the back line, I think, looking at them on paper. They're two strong teams playing tonight.
Well, they are two very good back lines, and that's why I said the Taranaki chairman was looking a little bit pensive, and I think it mostly would be to do with that Manawatu back line. It certainly is a very good one they've got there. Kurt Baker at the back, who played a number of games, and indeed was in the Taranaki team that won the Shield in 2011 against Southland and Chicago.
That was a cracker of a game too, wasn't it? That was a cracker of a game. Well,
it was an entirely different game, that one, John. All the points were scored off the boot.
Yeah.
No tries.
You're waxing poetic. I mean, you're speaking your words worthy. And do people give you... I mean, I didn't realise people in the Naki talked about rugby like this. Do people say to you from time to time, oh, tone it down, Grant, don't get carried away?
No, they don't. They don't say that at all, because one of Taranaki's great coaches, and indeed he was the coach of the 63 or 65 team, J.J. Stewart.
Yeah.
He said that New Plymouth or Taranaki and Southland would be the last two places in the world where rugby dies.
Yeah.
It's that ingrained in society.
Well, we hope it doesn't die there tonight. It's been wonderful having you on the program with us, Grant. Thank you so much.
Good on you, John.
Yeah, what a joyful preview. Grant Hassel, the chairman of the Supporters Club.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, good evening. Ko Katrina Batanaho. The Automobile Association says a Taupo crash that killed 4 and injured 8 is one of the worst driving tragedies this year. 44-year-old Tongan woman Pesi Tuavai died in one vehicle when a couple and a 5-year-old boy travelling in the other car were killed. Of the 6 injured who were travelling with Miss Tuivai, 2 young girls and 2 women remain in Rotorua Hospital. A 42-year-old man is in intensive care and a 32-year-old woman is stable in Waikato Hospital. A 7th woman was taken to hospital but not admitted. A 10-month-old boy, the only survivor from the other vehicle, is in a critical condition in Starship Hospital. An AA spokesperson, Dylan Thompson, says the road toll has increased for the 4th year in a row and drivers need to take more responsibility.
We tend to spend a lot of time talking about the problems we've got in terms of road safety. You know, we really just need to switch more of that focus to actually what can we do to make things better.
The AA's Dylan Thompson. A Manawatu farmer whose property is likely to be affected by the proposed alternative to the Manawatu Gorge Road says he's resigned to the possibility he might have to sell up. Today, the Transport Agency released a shortlist of 4 proposed alternatives to the road which connects Manawatu with the east coast. Any route would take a minimum of 5 years to complete and would cost at least $300 million and up to more than $500 million. Stuart Bolton, who owns a farm at the base of the Saddle Road, reckons 3 of the mooted options cut across his land. He says it isn't ideal, but he understands the significance of a reliable road.
2 of the 3 are going to be quite severe. Oh, it's invasive, but I find that you've got to live your life and carry on, so I'm not holding back. That's the way the cookie crumbles. I can see that it's in national interest.
Farmer Stuart Bolton. Plagiarism and incomprehensible English in students' work at an Auckland Tertiary institute has led to 4 courses being shut down. NZQA is moving about 80 international students in management and business programs at the International College of Auckland to Aspire 2, another tertiary provider. Jessie Chang reports.
The Qualifications Authority says most of the students were part-way through the courses, with some nearly finished. Grant Clinkham from the authority says all those taking the college's Level 5 business diploma will have to restart the same course at Aspire 2. He says marking at the college often wasn't at the right level, some students plagiarised work, and the English was frequently incomprehensible. Dr Clinkham says the authority is working with the college and Aspire 2 to ensure a smooth transition for the students. In the past year, the authority has cancelled the registration of 5 tertiary institutes. Ko Jessie Chang, TNA.
Firefighters in Northern California are bracing for the worst tomorrow, with hot, dry winds set to return. At least 15 people are known to have died and more than 150 others are missing as wildfires continue to burn in several counties north of San Francisco. The fires have destroyed up to 1,500 homes and buildings, and in the town of Santa Rosa, entire districts have been gutted. The Director of California Fire Protection, Ken Pimlott, says firefighters are battling to contain the fires and it's feared the death toll will rise.
We're in a serious situation. This is absolutely a fire siege. Late Sunday evening, at the time, 14 major fires. Right now, burning in California, we have over 17 large fires. Well over 115,000 acres have burned just in the last 24 hours.
Fire official Ken Pimlott. Two of the victims were an elderly couple aged 198 who were found dead in their home in Napa. An appeal to try to save plans for Dunedin's first five-star hotel has reopened debate about its design. The developer is going to court over the 17-storey glass tower project, which commissioners rejected last month. Here's our Otago Southland reporter Ian Telfer.
Dunedin's split on the merits of saving the hotel, dubbed the Electric Thistle. The Otago Chamber of Commerce welcomes the developer's decision, and a survey of business people found overwhelming support. Some say the design's good enough to bring high-value tourists and new jobs to the city. But Meg Davidson from the City Rise Up group says the tall, glassy tower would detract from Dunedin's heritage. Ms Davidson says Anthony Toswell's wasting his time if he thinks he can cut a few stories off and save the project in court. In Dunedin, ko Ian Telfer tēnei.
A pilot program at Nelson Hospital aims to reduce the risk of hair loss in cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy. The Breast Cancer Foundation is funding the project, led by consultant medical oncologist Dr. Kate Gregory. The foundation has spent $67,000 on a special scalp cooling machine and to help fund a nurse to operate it for the next 6 months. Dr. Gregory says hair loss during chemotherapy can be devastating for cancer patients, and the machine, which works by cooling down the head, has had proven results overseas. She says between 4 and 5 new breast cancer patients each week in Nelson, and all are being invited to take part in the pilot program. The project will record the level of success achieved and how much extra clinic time is needed for the process. It's 6:05. Sport. The Australian netball team's expecting much greater intensity from the Silver Ferns when the two sides contest the third Constellation Cup netball test in Adelaide tonight. The Silver Ferns must win to keep the 4-match series alive after losing the two opening encounters in Auckland and Christchurch. The Diamonds can wrap up a 5th straight Constellation Cup series with a win, and defender Courtney Bruce indicated her team are preparing for a strong response from the New Zealand side.
We're looking to improve and they're coming back and improving every time. I think that this game tonight is going to be interesting to see how much they take a step forward and how we combat that.
Australian defender Courtney Bruce. New Zealand will play Peru for a place at the Football World Cup finals in Russia in 2018. The All Whites opponents in an intercontinental home and away playoff next month were confirmed today after the completion of South American qualifying. And Manawatu hope to break a nearly 40-year Ranfurly Shield drought when they challenge Taranaki in New Plymouth tonight. Taranaki are boosted by the return of All Blacks wing Waisaki Naholo, while the Manawatu team features the All Blacks midfielder Ngani Laumape and the former Taranaki outside back Kurt Baker. Taranaki won the Shield last week when they upset Canterbury. And Dame Valerie Adams has given birth to her first child. The 33-year-old shot put champion and her partner Gabriel Price welcomed baby girl Kimoana Joseph Adams Price into the world this morning. That's the news.
Will Winston Peters do business with the Greens?
If you look at New Zealand First Labour and the Green Party on the campaign trail, we were saying things that were very, very similar in many spaces, including on transport.
Will he confer with his own?
I suspect that Kim Jong-un probably runs a more consultative process in his party than Winston Peters does in New Zealand First.
And should we stick with MMP?
Small parties vetoing the ability to reform the RMA. So if you need the sort of big bang reform to face these challenges, in actual fact, MMP is the real handbrake to that.
Standing by, Guy and Espiner and Susie Ferguson. Morning Report, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, a unique way of highlighting the global decline of honeybees. And after 10, the Australian author Jane Harper on her latest novel, Force of Nature. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty, mainly fine. Isolated showers clearing tomorrow morning. Waikato to Wellington, including Taumaranui, Taupo and Taihape. Showers, some heavy, clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Gisborne to Wairarapa, showers in Wairarapa spreading north this afternoon, then mostly clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine, but isolated showers remain about the Gisborne ranges. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers becoming isolated, then clearing tomorrow morning and becoming fine. Nelson, a few showers clearing this afternoon and becoming fine. Bulla and Westland, fine south of Hukatika. Showers in the north, clearing tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, partly cloudy and a few showers, clearing by tomorrow morning and becoming mainly fine. And the Chatham Islands, rain, possibly heavy with thunderstorms this afternoon, turning to showers tomorrow morning, then easing later. It's 6:09 and you're listening to Checkpoint. I'm just going to check what the Taranaki thing is. It's probably okay weather.
Yeah.
Go the Naki.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be
That's
a wonderful
for the Ranfurly
game.
Shield, just in case
Yeah.
anybody's wondering what I'm talking about.
Kick off in an hour and 25 minutes. Thank you everyone for being with us. You are with Checkpoint on RNZ. It's been a really terrible day for the Tongan community in Palmerston North after one of its members died and others were injured in an horrific road crash near Taupo yesterday afternoon. Pese Tuivai was 44, was killed, and the 6 people she was travelling with were hurt when their vehicle and another car collided yesterday. It does look like a real head-on. One of the injured, a 42-year-old man, remains in a critical condition. They've been returning from a church conference in Auckland. 3 people in the other vehicle died, including a 5-year-old boy. A 10-month-old baby boy is in a critical condition in Starship Hospital in Auckland. A devastated Tongan community is holding a meeting in less than an hour's time in Bunnythorpe, north of Palmerston North. Our reporter Adriana Weber is outside the church where it's being held and joins us now. Hi Adriana, it's lovely to have you with us, although terrible circumstances for the congregation of that church behind you. Can you tell us what more we have learned today?
Hi John, yes, more details are emerging about those who lost their lives in this horrific crash. One of them, as you mentioned, was Pese Tuivai, and she was a 44-year-old mother of 4. She had 3 sons and a 3-year-old daughter, and she was a relief teacher at a local early childhood centre here. We spoke earlier with her cousin, Olivia, and she described her as a very warm and caring, incredibly fond of her children, loved her children dearly, and it's described this as quite a loss for the community here. It's just such an awful event that's happened here. And she did mention as well that they were part of a convoy of about 11 cars that were coming down from this church event from Auckland, and they were making their way, and they were the last of the 11 cars to come back to Manawatu.
I guess we don't even really need to ask this question, but what has been the reaction of the Tongan community there in Palmerston North and the Manawatu region?
Well, disbelief, really. There does seem to be the sense of shock. And I mean, that's understandable given that this only happened just over 24 hours. So the people that I've spoken to here and the people behind me who have just been coming into the church already have just been in a state of shock. They're very, very quiet, don't know how to feel at the moment. Of course, there is Ms. Tuivai's daughter is still in hospital as well. She's still recovering. Her 3-year-old daughter is in a stable condition in the Rotorua hospital, so they're also worried about her and about the others who are injured.
What's happening there this evening, Adriana?
Well, the Tongan community here, there's about 15 families here that are involved with this church behind me, and they are going to be gathering, they're going to be saying prayers and just coming together to sort of show the support for Ms. Tuivai's family, and they're just going to sort of come together and try to come to grips with this horrible tragedy. And also for the next 2 days, the local early childhood centre where she worked will be closed as a mark of respect and to help staff come to terms with this loss.
Adrian Webber joining us live from outside the church in Bunnythorpe, where, as Adriana said, people will be coming together to try to take stock, make sense of it, if any sense can be made, and simply to grieve and to mourn. It's 30 minutes past 6. The Transport Agency has whittled the number of options for an alternative route to the Manawatu Gorge Road down to 4. But it will be at least 5 years before any are finally completed, and none of them come cheap. The lowest estimates for a new state highway are about $300 million, with other options swelling to over $500 million. But amid all the talk of dollars and years and kilometres, there is a human cost too. Stuart Bolton owns a farm at the base of the Saddle Road, and he reckons 3 of the mooted options cut right through his property. He's resigned to his fate, though, telling our reporter Gemma Brackybush that he'll sell up if it's in the public good.
When the gorge was closed way back in April, I think next day was Anzac Day or whatever, when it didn't open up, I had the suspicion there was nothing going to happen and there was no activity there for various reasons. I sort of started to speculate to myself that maybe there was more to meets the eye. So I just watched and sat on the fence, and then you just sit there in the hills there and look at sort of a possible route and go, my place sort of lies in that sort of route, really.
How do you feel about it?
Oh, it's invasive, but I find that you've got to live your life and carry on, so I'm not holding back. It's a nice little area there. I'm landlocked, so I've got river and railway line on each side, so yeah, it's a nice little spot, native trees, native birds, etc., so I get the variety of everything.
What has NZTA told you?
Yeah, basically what we're looking at here. Yep, no Pacifics, basically. This is a route, but that's all it is.
So if option 1, 2 and 3 were to go ahead, your farm would be what? It would have the head road going through it, or what? Explain to me what would be happening.
Now, we're looking at basically a bridge from the Gorge Walk car park over the river, over the railway line into the back of my place, and then number 1 option is going to be the most extreme. All in all, 2 of the 3 are going to be quite severe.
Okay, so quite severe, you would lose your farm, or you would lose quite a big chunk of it?
Oh, definitely a big chunk. What entails, I don't really know yet.
And so, I mean, you sound like a realistic man. If this is the option and you had to sell up, that would be okay?
Yeah, it gives you an option, yeah. Yep. So we've got the balance of the family farm, so we don't know. I don't know what may work in the long-term run with my father. He's 86. Maybe it stays in the family. I don't know. So it gives me another option.
So you're sounding pretty positive, or, you know.
Oh, I can't be negative, no. That's the way the cookie crumbles. I can see that it's in national interest, so I can't really hold back.
That's Stuart Bolton speaking with our Manawatu reporter, Gemma Brackybush. The founder of a Facebook page set up to tell beneficiary stories says the experience has revealed and uncovered accusations of racism and an insight into how hard life can be for many solo mothers. Sam Orchard created the account 2 months ago as he felt discussion had focused too much on individual responsibility and not enough on problems occurring when people interacted with work and income. Philippa Tolley and visual journalist Rebecca Parsons-King compiled this report.
The social media account We Are Beneficiaries uses local artists to illustrate the often harrowing accounts sent in by those who end up needing a benefit. Sam Orchard, an artist himself, says it's a way of honouring the people who are sharing their stories, the majority of them from single mothers. He says many are keen to air their experiences.
I think the power of a collective voice is really important within the project. The fact that it is so many people saying stories that kind of fit alongside each other and create a bigger picture, so it's not just about individuals, that it really demonstrates that the system has a big problem with racism and the system has a really big problem with single mums in particular. That's been something that I had no idea about before, but that's been really highlighted for me, the treatment of single mums on a benefit.
Sam Orchard was surprised by what he thinks is a lack of compassion and generosity being shown to solo mothers on a benefit. One of those is Anna. That isn't her real name, but she's worried about the implications of speaking publicly. She has 2 boys, one of whom has a disability, but for years she wasn't told about the childcare she was entitled to.
I wasn't aware until 5 years after him receiving this childcare disability allowance. As part of that, you're automatically entitled to 50 hours childcare assistance. I wasn't aware of that until I went up to the counter one day and they said to me, oh, yeah, because you're receiving child disability allowance, you're entitled to this. And I'm like, well, why hasn't anybody told me?
Anna says it would have changed her life if she'd known.
It would have been stressless. You know, like it's a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. It would have made such a difference if I'd known that.
Another mother, Cleo, also not her real name, has 2 primary school-aged girls. She says while some work and income staff have been helpful, others have left her distraught.
I mean, I ended up in tears so many times, leaving there or in there, crying, demanding to see the manager and things because it would be so unfair. Like one time I went to get wood because my heat pump in my rental property kept shutting down when it was too cold, and I just wanted like $50 worth of wood, and the woman was just like, no. Freezing cold house in Dunedin, 2 small children, we are literally freezing, and she did not care.
Kay Reid is in charge of frontline staff at Work and Income and says they have listened to calls for more focus on clients and admits at times things do go wrong.
We don't like it. We know it makes all of us unhappy when we have a client complaining because they haven't been treated in the right way or they haven't received the right type of support that they knew that they needed for their needs, and we move quickly to try to correct.
She says the agency is determined to be empathetic and for every client to feel supported and respected. Sam Orchard, the founder of We Are Beneficiaries, hopes to have published 200 stories by the end of this month. For Checkpoint, Philippa Tolley.
And you can hear more about the culture and stresses at Work and Income on Insight, which is this Sunday morning after the 8 o'clock news, of course. Lots of feedback coming in tonight, and here's a sample of it. David's had a gutsful of Winston Peters and asked, why does the media even bother with him? He's not saying anything. I'm sick of his wisecracks and condescending attitude to the reporters. Shut the smarminess down. Don't empower him. Don't interview him. I'd love to see the reporters just say thanks for nothing and turn their backs on him. The scalp calling program. Tracy Neal filed a story out of Nelson. This is for cancer patients going through chemotherapy. Hi, John. Read the scalp calling program. A friend of ours had this treatment in the UK some 20 years ago. Says Wendy, and Ruth says, I'm an oncology nurse and have worked in chemo units offering scalp calling. Not only did it fail to stop hair loss in the majority of women, it was very uncomfortable and many people gave up on it. I can't believe a charity is spending so much money on this. On Dunedin's proposed 5-star hotel. Hi, John. The proposed hotel designed for Dunedin isn't iconic. I'm not sure who used that word, but obviously someone must have. It was awful. Anthony Toswell should read Michael Leunig's poem entitled The Awfulizers. Every night and every day, the awfulizers work away, awfulizing public places, favourite things and little graces, awfulizing lovely treasures, common joys and simple pleasures, awfulizing far and near the parts of life we hold so dear, democratic, clean and lawful, awful, 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 awful. Kind regards, Alan. Alan, you can send in poetry any time you like. 21 minutes past 6. Thank you for your feedback in all its non-awfulness. A major disaster has been declared in Northern California. We were there earlier in the program with the editor of the local newspaper in Napa. 15 people have now been killed in really fast-moving wildfires, described by one official as a fire siege. The fires have destroyed an estimated 1,500 homes and buildings in several counties in the state's famed wine-growing region north of San Francisco. In one of the worst affected towns of Santa Rosa, entire districts have been gutted. 17 major fires are now burning across the state. With more, here's CNN's Dan Simon.
From northern to southern California, more than a dozen wildfires still burning out of control.
Trying to get out of here. We saw it, now it's getting across the road. It's all bad.
50 miles northwest of San Francisco in wine country, flames tore through parts of Santa Rosa, California, turning cars and subdivisions into ash.
They were screaming, fire, 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 get out, get out.
It just happened so fast. You just had time just to run away with nothing.
We have cars and Harleys and boats and all kinds of stuff all gone.
Fast food restaurants, hotels, and homes all destroyed. Allison DeToffoli is seeing her parents' house for the first time.
They're 85 years old, and I just don't know if they can rebuild. I mean, so many family heirlooms. I've thought my whole life I'm going to inherit these someday. This is what I'm going to pass down to my kids. Oh, God, I can't.
Hospitals in the area evacuated. Flames turning several subdivisions into piles of debris.
All your life savings and work for all the years is gone.
More than 115,000 acres have burned, much of it in California's wine country, Napa and Sonoma counties. Penny Wright and her husband are trying to see what they can salvage. Even their safe couldn't withstand the heat.
Since we've lived here 10 years, I never thought that Santa Rosa would have a fire like this, and we would lose everything.
Fires in Anaheim have lit up the skies over Walt Disneyland. Hurricane-force winds pushed the flames so fast, firefighters couldn't keep up.
On the eastern flank last night, we tried to go direct in a couple of different places, and we got outrun by the fires.
Mill Valley, California Fire Chief Tom Welch's own home near Santa Rosa burned.
The fires are still out there. They are still actively growing.
And the firefighters are exhausted.
Resources still continue to be limited. We have folks on the fire line starting their third shift right now that have not been relieved because there's folks not available to come in with so many fires in the area.
Authorities have begun identifying the victims. They include an elderly couple, the husband 100 years old, the wife 98 years old, and this fire here in Santa Rosa, California is still 0% contained.
It's 24 minutes past 6. The census is a shot at finding out who we are and how we describe ourselves. And if you're Ngāti Hine, you will be able to say exactly that. It's one of 33 new iwi groups to be included in the 2018 New Zealand census. Now, in the past, the far north iwi members either had to select Ngāpuhi or write down their iwi. Te Mana Korehi reporter John Boynton has more.
Te runanga o Ngāti Hine Acting Chair Peter Tipene says it's been a 15-year process for his iwi to be included on the census forms. The process was started by late Ngāti Hine leader Eri Mahinare, and Mr Tipene says it's a step forward for his tribe, and the newly collected information will help the iwi move positively into the future.
We are really keen to get information that we can use to make better decisions in our Ngāti Hine entities in regard to housing, education, health, etc. So in terms of moving forward, being proactive and positive, it's fantastic.
Ngāti Hine is based in the far north and runs from the Taumarere River in Kawakawa and covers inland areas such as Moerewa, Matawaia and Pipiwai. Peter Tipene says Ngāti Hine has always considered itself an iwi, and at the moment there are around 7,000 people on their tribal register.
We have a vision statement and a catch cry, which is, and I'll say it, Mā Ngāti Hine anō Ngāti Hine e kōrero. So in terms of self-determination, we're moving ahead as Ngāti Hine.
Mr Tipene says there will be people in Ngāpuhi who won't like Ngāti Hine being included as an iwi in census data.
It's not to say that we're not part of Ngāpuhi, but we certainly don't think that anybody else should be making decisions about us here in our tribal area.
Ngāti Hine Kaumātua Waihoroe Shortland says next year's census data will be a vital source of information for the tribe.
And that's got to be helpful to us at home here. It's got to be helpful to us across the country. Ngāti Hine needs to be reconnected, and that's a very serious business for us.
Mr Shortland says coming out from under the Ngāpuhi umbrella has always been a goal.
Certainly a lot of the resistance to those who would see us as a one-size-fits-all solution. Ngāti Hine, I think rightly, has always advocated its own capacity to speak for itself.
Statistics New Zealand Kaihotu Rhonda Paku says the same list of iwi has been used since 1996. A review after the 2013 census has resulted in the changes around groups seeking iwi status for the census.
Since that time, the number of iwi who haven't seen themselves in the list have been asking to be included, and rightfully so, they have wanted to ensure that they can get their own data.
Rhonda Paku says groups who will now have their own iwi status in the census will have direct access to information about their iwi.
The review, however, which allows a more inclusive approach, means that whakapapa-based groups no longer required to seek that agreement from the groups they're currently being counted under.
Statistics New Zealand will also check whether iwi groups looking to be included in the census are recognised in the Māori Fisheries Act and by tribal network organisations such as Tūhono and Te Kāhui Māngai. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko John Boynton-aho.
Coming up to the end of the program, just before we go, a previously lost portrait by the Italian master Leonardo da Vinci, and the last one still in private hands is to go on sale in New York. It's estimated to be worth more than, say, 140 million, but it's so rare, auctioneers admit they don't really know how much it will fetch. With the details, this report from the BBC.
It's been described as the last Da Vinci. Salvator Mundi, saviour of the world, a portrait of Christ dating to around 1500. It was only rediscovered 12 years ago when it was sold at auction, initially believed to be a copy.
The new buyers started the restoration process, and once the old paint layers began to come off, the repaint layers, you could see the original quality, and it was at that point that it was beginning to be understood that it really might be Leonardo's lost original, which had long been known to have existed but was presumed to have been destroyed.
Leonardo da Vinci, perhaps the greatest and most important artist of all time. The creator of the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. So what price do you put on genius?
We're being a little vague, around $100 million. I mean, there's never been anything like it sold, so in a way, how much it makes is really, we're not really sure, so the market will decide, but it's around $100 million as an estimate.
All will be revealed next month when the auction takes place in New York. Soon, the last Da Vinci will have a new home.
We're just trying to have a discussion as to why there was classical music underneath that. It was just a BBC package, just, I suppose, high painting gets classical music. I reckon Leonardo da Vinci would have really liked Kendrick Lamar. You would have thought he banged it out of the park. Anyway, that's Checkpoint for tonight. Thank you for being with us on behalf of our excellent, hard-working and up with the times on the music front team. We hope to see you tomorrow night at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The Automobile Association says a Taupo crash that killed 4 and injured 8 is one of the worst driving tragedies this year. A farmer whose land is in the path of proposed alternative routes to the Manawatu Gorge Road is putting on a brave face at the news he might have to sell up. Plagiarism and incoherent work has resulted in 4 courses being shut down at an Auckland Tertiary institute, and at least 17 people have now died at the California wildfires north of San Francisco. Our next news and weather is at 7.
When Sheryl Sandberg was a little girl, the other kids used to call her Bossy. But then she did become the boss, #2 at Facebook. And today, she asks audiences all the time,
please raise your hand if as a boy you were ever called Bossy. No hands go up.
But when she asks women,
all the hands go up.
I'm Guy Raz. Lessons from leaders next time on the TED Radio Hour.